All right, welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Tonight, we are using closed captioning on the YouTube live stream, so please speak clearly for those speaking during the meeting so the closed captions are as accurate as possible. Would everyone in the boardroom please stand as you're able, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence for those that have given their lives in service to our country, and also just for all the children across the world today that are caught up in a bit of strife, so that they may be safe and healthy. Ms. King, may I have a roll call, please?
Peggy Mueller-Aragon, Danielle Gonzalez,
Here.
Barbara Peterson,
Here.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Here.
Josefina Dominguez,
Here.
Courtney Jackson,
Here.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
So we're going to move to agenda. Oh, here. I didn't say here. Did I not? I just went, I want to go. All right, I'm here. So our next item is approval of the November 1st, 2023 Board of Education meeting agenda. But before we vote, staff has asked that the executive session be postponed to another meeting. So let's please remove it from the agenda at the vote. So I'd like to ask for a motion on this, please.
I'll move that we accept the November 1st, 2023 Board of Education meeting agenda in the amended form, leaving out the executive session.
I'll second. This is Courtney.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
No, she might be in transition.
Barbara Peterson,
Here.
Crystal Tapia.
I'm a yes, I couldn't mute, but
Okay, and I did hear Board Member Gonzalez affirm yes. Okay.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, our next item is approval of the minutes. This one had some special ones in there. So approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting on October 18th, 2023, the special Board of Education meeting workshop on superintendent search on October 18th, 2023, and the Instruction and Accountability Committee meeting that was held September 14th, 2022. So I think this is just catching up on some minutes that were missed. So
I'll move for approval of the minutes from the Board of Education meeting from October 18th, the special Board of Education for the superintendent search on October 18th, and the instruction on accountability from September 14th.
I'll second. This is Josefina.
can I have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson,
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes, so our next item is public forum, and Secretary Jackson will share the instructions and get us started on that.
Okay. So welcome to our public forum guests. When you signed up to speak, you were asked to review the rules and expectations which our proceeding officer will enforce. The New Mexico Open Meetings Act requires that our agenda specify in advance the items that will be discussed and voted on during the meeting. Therefore, public forum is not a dialogue among speakers and board members, but rather a chance to hear from our community. We will call participants to speak in the order they signed up, whether in person or virtual. Those here with us tonight will be asked to come to the microphone in the center aisle at the back of the room when your name is called. Online guests will stay in a virtual waiting room until it is your turn to speak. When it is your time, you will be escorted into the main meeting space. Please make sure that your audio and video are on. Once your speaking time is up, you will be ushered back into the waiting room. When you are finished speaking, you may choose to leave the meeting and watch it on live stream. We have set aside 45 minutes for public forum. Because there are fewer than 22 speakers tonight, you will each have 2 minutes to address the board. Please be concise and try not to repeat what others have said. Tonight, there are 3 speakers. Yes, 3 speakers. Once your time is up, you'll be directed to complete your sentence quickly so that others may speak. You may not yield your unused time to another speaker. And if you did not feel that you were able to convey your message, you may email boarded@aps.edu. In addition, for those of you who are here tonight, a representative from our service center is here to assist you, and she's right there. So, Mr. Gonzalez, will you please introduce our speakers?
Thank you, Board Member Jackson. Our first speaker is in person, Nicole Torres. You'll have 2 minutes once you begin speaking into the mic.
Good evening, Madam President and school board members. Thank you for serving. My name is Nicole Torres. My youngest son is a freshman this year at Rio Grande High School. Part of his schedule is to take an ethnic studies class. During this class, his teacher has brought up her political beliefs multiple times, also talking bad about the past president. It went too far about a week ago when she compared Trump to Hitler and had multiple slides and pictures comparing the two. This is very alarming. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that any U.S. president should be compared to Hitler, nor should this be taught in class. She then asked all the kids who supported the MAGA movement, as my son and one other boy raised their hand, and the classmates mocked them. I'm concerned about the well-being of my son and the class and being bullied. What is this class for? Why is this class allowed to be taught? Not only that, but the kids being mocked, segregated, and bullied all because of what they believe in is wrong. We also found out that this class is not taught in all APS schools. Why Rio Grande High School? Why are the teachers allowed to openly share about their political beliefs instead of sticking to the curriculum? Or is this part of the curriculum? That would be alarming if it is. My son wanted nothing more to attend Rio Grande High School, to be part of the ROTC program in hopes to one day join the military and serve and protect this country. This is wrong, and if this class is what this is about, and the teacher is segregating our children, we need to remove this class from the schools immediately. Thank you, and we appreciate you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Torres. The next speaker is Dr. Chanello. You have 2 minutes, sir, once you begin speaking.
Good evening, Madam President and school board members. My name is Dr. Geraldo Chanello, and the books you should have on your desk by Dr. Miriam Grossman, Lost in Translation. And they are my early Thanksgiving gift to you guys there for serving APS, and I appreciate you guys. So Dr. Rita Kurtu of Katyala in New York City on October 12, 2023, quoted, "Gender affirming care is dangerous. I know because I helped pioneer it," end quote. My country and others found there is no solid evidence supporting the medical transitioning of young people. Why aren't American clinicians paying attention? Dr. Katyala, 58 years old, is a Finnish-born and trained adolescent psychiatrist, the chief psychiatrist in the Department of Adolescent Psychiatry at Finland's Tampere University Hospital. She treats patients, teaches medical students, and conducts research in her field, publishing more than 200 scientific articles. In 2011, Dr. Katyala was assigned a new responsibility to oversee the establishment of a gender identity service for minors, making her among the first physicians in the world to head a clinic devoted to the treatment of gender-distressed young people. Since then, she has personally participated in the assessment of more than 500 such adolescents. Dr. Katyala and 20 clinicians from 9 countries wrote that, and I quote, "Every systematic review of evidence to date, including one published in the Journal of the Endocrine Society, has found the evidence for mental health benefits of hormonal intervention for minors to be of low or very low uncertainty," end quote. We need to learn from such scandal because gender transition has gotten out of hand. When medical professionals start saying they have one answer that applies everywhere, or that they have a cure for all of life's pain, that should be a warning to us and school board members. That something has gone very wrong. Would you agree? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And our third person has not shown up, so that completes public forum.
Thank you. Thank you so much for our two guests for coming in to speak tonight. Thank you for sharing your concerns, and we will take a look at those. So thank you. Our next item is student outcomes focused governance, and we're going to be considering approval of the plan for the two community engagement events scheduled for November 13th and November 16th. And our presenter is the chair of this ad hoc committee is Courtney Jackson, Danielle Gonzalez, and Josefina Dominguez.
All right.
You have the floor.
Get situated here. Okay. So, you guys should have in front of you the draft community engagement event that is focusing on the superintendent characteristics, as well as the community outreach planning list. So before we kind of dive into a discussion, I just wanted to lay out what the objectives that we as a committee decided we wanted to address this evening. Just kind of give a timeline as to how we got here, and then we can dive into discussions on each of the objectives that we need to meet. The first objective tonight is that we're going to present the community engagement timeline to all of you, focusing on superintendent characteristics. Then we will present and get some member assignment to the community outreach planning list. Again, for the superintendent search, we will make a final decision on the attendance of Dr. Walt Cooper to these community outreach events as a board. We also need to decide and let Dr. Albright know, hopefully this evening, who can attend which of the two events on the 13th and the 16th. And then we'll just kind of touch on any essential timelines and dates. So just as a brief kind of reminder as to how we got here, the community engagement ad hoc committee is still working. We met again on October 19th with the specific intent to create two community outreach events focusing on superintendent characteristics. The goal was to set a timeline, to confirm which schools would be hosting, to decide on the focus of the events, to update any planning lists that we have, and to reestablish the community outreach planning list. At that meeting, we decided that the best way to move forward on this event was to start off with a brief recap of student outcomes focused governance, what we have done, where we are going, and why what we are focusing on with SOFG, why those characteristics are so crucial for our next superintendent. Throughout the planning document, you can see that there is a reminder that we are an SOFG board, and that because of that, all of our decisions that we make will put student outcomes first. So in this meeting, we put together we decided to put together a timeline and a planning list. It was built by two board members because one was traveling. But then it was sent to all of the committee members on October 24th for review prior to us meeting again yesterday, which is October 31st. So we all had a week to kind of review that timeline. Then yesterday we met again to discuss the timeline, and what was presented at that meeting was more of a cleaned up version of the one that was sent on October 24th, mainly because the one on October 24th had abbreviations and outlines and just kind of wanted to clean it up for presentation. We also began building out from that timeline, building out a script, basically where we are adding verbiage to the timeline that we created. And what's going to happen with that is right now the committee members are reviewing that script, reviewing verbiage, and the goal is that all of the committee members will have edits by Friday, and we will share that with the board prior to the events. So moving to the first objective, sorry, I'll stop there. Board Member Dominguez, do you have anything to add?
Just that we are going to give the rest of the board that script before it's ever presented. I think, could you review those dates? Is it the 3rd?
So the committee will review the script until this Friday, and then we will I don't think we have a solid date as to when we're going to send the script out yet.
For feedback from, or at least to let them know.
To see it, I think to see it prior to, but I don't know that the script needs to have board approval. Just the timeline.
Yeah, we won't have enough time for it to come back
Right.
to the full board, but it's an opportunity for every board member to see it before is what, because I think what is important is just being able to look at it before we actually have to be at the event. So,
Right.
so, because I know the last time we did this, we got scripts and they were a little wonky. I think we struggled with them a little bit, but I have confidence that what you guys are pulling together is going to be a lot easier. Hopefully it's not as wordy and as difficult to follow. So I appreciate the opportunity to take a look at it before.
Yeah, definitely. It'll
Okay.
definitely be sent out before the events.
Okay.
So, Board Member Gonzalez, are you there? And do you have anything to add before I move on?
Don't have anything to add. You can keep going.
Okay. All right, so the first thing that we wanted to present for recommendation to the board is the timeline, which is in front of you, the draft community engagement event. Hopefully you have had a chance to kind of review it. I am definitely not going to read it to you, but what I can do is go through and just hit the highlights. And then we can discuss if there are any changes. So basically from 3 to 6, it's all about setting up. We are wanting to potentially have some community celebrities is how we're phrasing it at this event, as a way to kind of draw people to the event who aren't necessarily just the parents of the student groups that are performing. So we're still in the thought process of that. So if anybody has great ideas, please let us know. 6 o'clock, the event begins, and it begins with another, like a presentation on student outcomes focused governance, that this is the district we are in now. The goals, the guardrails, the strategic plan, what the superintendent responsibilities are, and what the Board of Education responsibilities are. And you can see we discuss the SOFG, we discuss the goals and the guardrails, and then we move into a discussion of, this is what we have done, but now this is where we are going. And we reiterate the fact that we are going to continue our community engagement and outreach, let them know that we have a 2-year calendar that we've already committed to, and progress monitoring. Then we will touch on the strategic plan, and we will tie it all together with the strategic plan video. So again, it's just a rehash of this is why SOFG is so important. And then we dive into the superintendent hiring timeline, as well as the discussion. So the first thing that we thought we should do for the actual conversation with the community is, you can see down at the bottom, is the very first turn and talk is where the prompt will be, what do you not want to see in a superintendent? And we've pulled that directly from our discussions with our coach from Council of Great City Schools. What this does is it helps to really drive to clarity what you really are looking for. It helps to avoid like this long list of like a unicorn person that it's just not possible, right? Like, I want somebody who loves Diet Coke, but maybe that's not possible. I don't know. So that'll be the first discussion. And then we will then move into more small groups of, now that we've talked about what you do not want, now let's kind of clarify that into what you do want in a superintendent. We'll let them kind of have those discussions, and then they will turn to their small group and share those out. You can see on here at the 6:45 timeframe, this was brought to us by Board Member Dominguez, is that there really should probably be more of a process instead of just consolidated into your top 5. So I did add in there that we could have a printout of the Mac and Jack, is that what?
Mac and J.
Mac and J.
Just J.
M and J.
M and J.
Their nominal group technique, that is what was used here when you guys narrowed it down. We thought that, I thought, and it can certainly be a discussion, that we could have that on the table, but that's just more of an assistance as to how to narrow down the characteristics. Because one thing that we really did want to point out is this has to be an authentic discussion coming from the community, not a discussion that is driven by the board. So you'll see at the bottom, I did make a note, board members are asked to refrain from giving their input and thoughts during the community conversations. The characteristics coming from the community must be authentic. So we have that, and then we will move to a large group share out where each group will share their top 3 to 5 competencies. We will capture all of those very similarly to what we did last year on Post-its and flip charts and all of that. We will consolidate all of that and give it to somebody.
To Johanna.
To Johanna. I keep looking at Johanna. Then we'll move into closing comments. Again, we're just focused on, there are other ways to engage. One thing that we will ask the attendees to do right then, send that survey out to 5 of your friends. And as we're doing that, here are some giveaways and prizes, and thank you for coming. And so we'll share all of the ways that you can continue to participate. We will thank everyone. The event will end at 7:45, and we'll have everything taken down and completed by 8:30.
Okay.
So,
And then just to be clear on the 2 event sites. So I noticed that it's not listed on.
so the 2 event sites are West Mesa is on November 13th. And
What part of West Mesa will that be? It's always an issue with high schools because there's so many different places, cafeteria, library.
I think Dr. Albright is going to be having a site visit,
Okay.
and that will
Okay.
be decided, but let me see if I can't pull up it might be on the,
It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
tonight.
Board President Montoya Cordova and Member Peterson, we're looking at libraries.
Okay,
And we are going to ask students to help we call them human signs, to help guide people to the right spot.
we don't have to know tonight. I just know from many high school events, if you don't know which building it is, it can be a challenge.
But I will say that the last time we hosted these, one of the things that I think our board staff did really well is that there was a lot of signage that got us to the right place. So I have no doubt we'll be able to do that appropriately. Okay, so
You're
West Mesa is the first one on the 13th.
West Mesa is on the 13th and Monzano High
Monzano.
School is on the 16th.
Okay,
Okay, and then just the other thing to point out, and that's at the very top of the document, is just like last time, 2 board members will lead each event. Other board members are certainly welcome to attend, should attend, but again, it'll be 2 board members who will lead each of the events. So I think I'll pause right there real quick and see Dr. Gonzalez. Board Member Dick Gonzalez, you're on. Is there anything that you would like to add before we move into larger discussion?
Nope, I think you can keep moving.
Board Member Dominguez.
No, I think you've covered it all.
Okay, so is the board comfortable with the timeline as recommended by the committee?
Yes.
we have to be. We're going to have to be because I know we're moving really quickly in terms of the timeline around the search. So, I mean, these events are really critical to get out. I just have a quick question around, because I really agree with you in terms of board members not influencing the conversation, right? I mean, because what I did hear from our search firm is how important it is for us, for there to be some safety in the room so that the individuals who are participating really feel free to have a conversation. And almost even recommended that like board members not be present because sometimes we could also just influence the conversation that way. So we really just have to really be very intentional on that so that this is their conversation and we need to be really clear about them being in charge of that conversation. So I was curious, who are we planning to use as table captains?
Yeah, so great question. So we are going to have the community school coordinators will be there as well. However, in an effort to increase that authenticity, we are asking that the table decide their own table captain so that the groups can decide, hey, community member who I've never met before, would you like to be the table captain? If for some reason we have, shy tables, that's where the community school coordinators will pop in and will help to facilitate those discussions.
Okay.
But again, they are also being trained when they show up that this is not
Their
this
conversation.
is not their conversation, and that the responses to anything should be, thank you so much, and should be as generic as possible.
I mean, I also feel like that needs to be part of the process at the end in terms of like summarizing things too. I don't think it should be a board member summarizing anything. I think we should be there to listen. So
Mhm.
I would recommend that, there's also a lead somehow outside of us who's going to do that. And I'm only saying this in my meeting with Dr. Cooper before we had our workshop. I asked him this question about that authenticity and how that's done. And he said that's really that's a really critical point, because then the community feels that they're being heard. And so I know that in some other instances, the search firm has actually been the one that's taken the lead on that to like just make sure that they're capturing that it's authentic and that it's outside of somebody from the district and somebody who's perceived as having ownership of the conversation. So I just want to bring that up too, but we just need to be really cautious about that.
And once the committee is done reviewing the script, you will see that within the script, we have inserted that language to the participants that
Okay.
we are here just
We're almost like bowed out
Yeah,
at that point.
right,
Okay.
there's an intention of
Okay.
like that point that you've made.
Mhm.
So, all right, any other additions or suggestions?
I'm just going to make this point only because I think I was afforded a different conversation with Dr. Cooper that happened before our workshop. I would like Dr. Cooper to be at both of these, and I'll tell you why. Dr. Cooper is going to be responsible for fielding that first recruit, where it's like sharing that message, but also tying it to what is being said by the community. And rather than it just being sort of a roll up of here's a list of things that I've heard, because I think it's a real visceral piece when you get to hear it yourself. And when I had spoke with Dr. Cooper, that is built into his contract. And so he's really close by. He's in Colorado Springs, so it's not that difficult for him to get here. And we could talk about that, but I really think that that's important. And I'm going to say this only because in the last search that I was a part of with the district, we didn't do that. And I felt like it was very influenced by board members alone. And so I think it's that reminder of somebody who's also listening to it, because I think Dr. Cooper did that with us as board members too, as he was listening to our words and trying to also put pen to like paper and sort of thought about where we were. But I would like to make that recommendation that we do have Dr. Cooper attend these, just so that he could be in the room and get at that firsthand piece, because I saw that missing for us in the last search that we did. We just didn't have that at all.
So that's the next bullet that we're going to make a decision.
Okay.
So, but first we need to decide on the time. Sorry,
Okay,
these
I'm
are my
sorry.
own little decisions.
I'm like
or
moving
my
right along.
objectives.
I'm sorry.
So,
Well, I like the agenda and I like
Okay.
everything that's here. So I'm
and so
sorry,
I
I'll
think
shut up.
that's what we need to do first, right? Is the committee has recommended, but we need to have approval from the board. So I don't think I can make the motion. So if somebody would like to move for approval of the draft community engagement event for superintendent characteristics, that would be awesome.
I'll make a motion to move for the draft community engagement event as listed out with the proposed timeline and activities.
I'll second.
Have a roll call, please.
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to my second.
Sorry.
My second discussion point here, I'll share with you. Those are my discussions. Okay. We as a board need to make a decision on the attendance of Dr. Walt Cooper. And then I will just kind of present the thoughts from the committee. And again, if the committee wants to jump in, please let me know. We are at a split decision on this with two of us thinking that it's not necessary. We don't need the extra cost. What would the benefit be? And another one of us very much in the same bucket as you are. So that is why we thought it was very important for us to bring it to the full board to make that decision on whether or not he should attend or not. So I think I'll just open it up to the board to add, if you have anything extra to add from what Board Member Montoya Cordova just said.
So I don't have anything to add, just a question, like what would the cost be and where would the expense come from?
Board President Montoya Cordova and Member Tapia Romero. The travel is already built into the contract, so it would be no additional cost. They've already budgeted for travel to here, and we're well under the travel costs because we are close and because he's been traveling primarily alone and not bringing people with him. So it won't cost anything extra.
Okay,
And nor will it save us money because it's already built into the contract.
thank you.
I think it makes sense for him to be here to hear that, because the importance of that initial search and who they identify as being the right people to bring in front of the board is huge. And so I agree that hearing the community is important.
I weighed in.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm in favor of having,
One,
So we have
one,
a-
two, three, and then
I don't see the harm of having it. It seems like it would benefit, especially if there's no additional fees with it.
okay. And Board Member Gonzalez, do you have anything to add?
No, it seems like there's consensus that people feel he should be here.
I think there's consensus. I don't know that there needs to be a motion on that. So, so consensus is that yes, Dr. Cooper will attend. All right. Third bullet point, we will move on to the community plan. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Real quick. Who can attend on November 13th?
That's good.
good.
Yeah, assignments.
Assignments. If you have not already sent your assignments to Dr. Albright, but if you can attend on the 13th and 16th, please let us know.
So I plan on attending both, but I will not be in, I'll be incapacitated in terms of my vision. So I won't be able to lead or.
Okay, so attend both, not lead. Okay.
And I will say that I will attend both, but not lead. And my reason for doing that is because I'm an outgoing board member.
Okay. Crystal?
So I could lead the 16th. 13th, we have our ad hoc finance meeting happening. And I know we finish at 4:30-ish.
We should be able to be there by.
Yeah, so I can attend the 13th, but I just can't be there as early as, like, for setup.
Okay. So, okay. Board Member Gonzalez?
I can only attend on the 13th, and I'm happy to lead on that one.
Okay, and lead.
And you'll also be at the ad hoc finance, so we'll just all run over there.
Lead on 13th, not on the 16th. Okay. I can be at the 16th. I can help lead the 16th. I don't know if I can be at the 13th. We might be attending a funeral. So,
So I think you'll be able to make it for this, for the 13th then, because that's your district. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
okay.
So-
So right now it looks like Crystal and I will lead on this. Barb, I skipped you.
I noticed.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will be at both of them.
Okay.
I'm happy to do whatever role
Mhm.
needs to be done.
Okay.
Same.
All right. So possibly you can lead on the 13th. Okay. And then we'll get with Peggy and see what her availability is as well.
Because I heard Board Member Gonzalez say she was available to lead on the 13th.
13.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if we have Board Member Gonzalez and Board Member Peterson for the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the 16th, it would be you and Crystal. Okay.
Okay. All right. And I've got it all written down, Dr. Albright, if you're listening. And then we'll get with Peggy to see what her availability is too. Okay, so moving on to the community planning list, which is that big document that you guys have in front of you. This is a list very similar to what we did last year. These are the outreach events. And again, these are outreach events where 2 board members must attend in order for it to count as outreach. We already have 2 organizations who have requested. It's the newcomers event. And Dr. Albright, I don't have the date on that.
The 18th.
No,
Oh, is it on here?
the 18th, Saturday, November the 18th.
Oh, okay. So we need to 2 board members who can attend that on the 18th.
I'm happy to attend.
Josephine, okay, board member Dominguez. Okay,
Sadly, I'll be out of town.
okay.
What time is it?
4 to 6.
I can do that one if you need me to.
Okay. I'll write you in. And then Super SAC is on November 16th from 1:30 to 3.
I can do that one
Okay, so we have.
since we have one in the evening on that same day, right? So, and I'm not leading. I can do the 6th.
Okay.
I'll do Super SAC on the 16th.
Okay,
I think I'm already signed up to be at Super Set.
Okay.
And I may be there.
okay. So I'll say YMC, BP, and JD. Okay. All right, and then I get the other thing is we pulled together this list again using the list from last year. Just some of the organizations that we've reached out to. So we certainly do not need to fill in the rest of this tonight, but as you're looking through these organizations and you can find another board member to, yeah, we're set. Or yours, I have it as you and whoever else you choose to go with.
Okay.
Who, as you look through these organizations, please get in contact with Dr. Albright and so that she can start filling it in for us. And as soon as we have the survey, we need to start getting some outreach. And I would actually suggest that you start reaching out to these organizations like 9 o'clock tonight. Yeah. As soon as we're done here. And we also created a very helpful email, just a script email that you can send out. It's super easy, just cut and paste and say, dear so-and-so, we would like to meet with you, or send out the survey. So that's right there, makes it super easy for you. But this is another way for us to do some outreach. Okay.
And just to recall everyone that this was the list that we had put together when we were compiling our wish list of organizations when we were doing community. It was kind of like our wish list if we were going to do community outreach events. So if there's other organizations that have since emerged, I think you just need to let Christy know, or because this list is very exhaustive, but it doesn't mean that we need to hit them all, but it's just a potential list of outreach organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. On
On that point, I would just add, there are the neighborhood associations, which are listed at the bottom. And what I did there was just take them from the top and paste them on the bottom under a header of neighborhood organizations. So that doesn't mean those are the only neighborhood associations identified for outreach. If there is a neighborhood association in your community, for example, North Valley Neighborhood Association, I could add that. The principle still applies that it needs to be 2 board members though.
You might want to consider the West Side Coalition. That's a really active bunch, and they always invite us to come speak. They're very, very open to APS and allowing us to be a part of that.
Okay. We will add that. Okay, so yes, so please take a look at this list and just, give your input to, you can give it to myself, Dr. Albright, Board Member Dominguez, or Board Member Gonzalez, and we can update the spreadsheet for you.
And I guess what I will add is that this outreach can occur all the way until the applications are done. I mean, really, it's through, well, not all the way through, which should probably be about the week before is what I would think, but at least through the middle of December or that first week in December.
Because we will have already missed one
Right.
cycle of monthly meetings.
Mhm. I think more
I think
importantly,
the point being to get it out as soon as possible for the survey. So as soon as that's available.
exactly, that's what I was going to add, is just getting that letter out to any organizations that we are, just inviting them into that survey. And I do have an update on that, but I'll include that in my president's report on the survey.
Oh, on the survey. Okay,
Yeah.
so I will take that off my. Okay, and then just, sorry, anything else to add, Board Member Gonzalez or Board Member Dominguez?
I think you've got it.
Right, you guys did a great
No?
job.
Okay, so just the final items is the invitation to these community events is in process. Most likely will be going out on Monday. It will be translated so that it goes out in both English and Spanish. So we're working on that. That's in the final stages. And I will take off the mention of the survey for your report.
Yeah, we can talk
And I
about
think
that. So
that's all we have.
I don't think we need, because we already approved the plan, so we're good there. So I think that's it.
So I just have a clarifying question. So as we're reaching out to these groups, just so we're not duplicating efforts, what's the best way to know if who's reaching out to who?
You need, before you reach out, you need to have, you need to assign, it
Got
needs to be in the spreadsheet.
Got it.
So do not reach out unless your name specifically is on this spreadsheet.
Okay, thank you.
So and it's a Google Doc.
It's, yes. Mhm.
Are you gonna resend it? Has it already been sent? Will it be sent?
I think it got sent today, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm. The link got sent
Okay.
to you.
Great.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Ta-da.
Ta-da! All of my bullet points are checked.
Great ad hoc report. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're making progress. All right, so our next item is consider approval of the consent agenda. And what this is archiving non-required board policies and transferring responsibility to the administration. And this is 6.1, but we're archiving 1 through 10. And these are from the October 16th, 2023 Policy Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, which recommends the archiving of non-required board policies and transferring responsibility to the administration for 1 through 10.
I will second. This is Courtney.
All right. Can I have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes, and I feel pounds lighter on this policy diet.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. All right, our next item for discussion and action is consider adoption of the guardrails for the board. And unfortunately, the board member that requested to have this removed, off consent and for discussion isn't with us tonight, but we could, let's just have a conversation, and this affords an opportunity for board member Tapia Romero, since you weren't here with us last time when we considered this through the policy committee. So let's go ahead and have some discussions. We have Jessica Martinez, I guess, is going to give us an update on terms of where we are.
Focused governance, you have considered adoption of the board's own guardrails, which are actions that the board may not take or allow in pursuit of the district goals. So tonight, the board will consider final approval for its own self guardrails. And with that, the guardrails are open for discussion.
So is there any discussion? Board member, I'm going to turn to board member Tapia Romero only because I feel bad because you weren't here
No,
with
you're
us last
fine.
time. And it's like, just if you want to give your thoughts on that, we could capture that and have it for the record. But these were, I believe we wordsmithed. I'm going to ask Board Member Gonzalez. I think these were smithed a little bit, but not a whole lot. I think they're all pretty good.
No, I don't have any, back to when I saw this, I think my question was like, didn't we already discuss this? But no, I'm good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the guardrails? There was only one question that was posed, and that was on the first one. I'm gonna do this in honoring the board member that's not here, was around that whole, how would we know about each other's assumptions and intentions? And my response was going to be, the way that we know about each other's assumptions and intentions is really on our integrity. I mean, we are the ones that have to hold that and do that. And I actually had even written something about this, but let me pull it up really quickly, because at the SOFG training, man, did we have a huge conversation about assumptions and how we can get ourselves on that. And so let me just read this really quickly. It's like, we don't think much about it, but we go through our daily lives with a huge range of assumptions about what is going on around us. At least I do, and I expect you do too. The activities of strangers remind us of the existence of other people and how their lives are different from our own. And sometimes we create stories in our minds about what is going on, and our initial assumptions can be very wrong. So being the genesis of change under SOFG and doing this part, before I make a decision about you, I will do my best to be mindful of how my personal assumptions may be creating a story about you that is not true. And my wish is that you do the same. If you are unsure about something you believe to be true about me, just ask me. And so I think that's part of the piece with this whole intention on this guardrail. And I feel like there's consensus with this group here on this, and it's important on this particular piece. If I've learned anything at all from the SOFG piece, the guardrails for the board is really where we do want consensus, because this is about us, and this is important for us to have agreement on everything that we state here, because these are the things that we're going to agree to do together. All right.
I just want to add that as I was part of the cohort in San Diego, that particular section on assumptions prompted, and this was good because AJ required us to do something during the break. And that was great, because I reached out to my partner in the cohort, Courtney, and we had a conversation about an assumption that I had made. So, and I think it was fruitful, right? I mean, we got things clarified. And so really it is about suspending assumptions and then being curious, having a sense of wonder, which is the first step in the Socratic method that many English teachers use. So full circle.
It was cathartic. That's all I will add. We had, I think Josie and I went through it was a very cathartic process, but I'm glad that I had a chance to do that. I'm planning to take my learning to a different level since I'm not going to be on the board, but I am still committed to board members. And so anyhow, so here we are on this action item. And so this is up for consideration for adoption. So I will entertain a motion.
I will move for adoption of the guardrails for the board.
I'll second. This is Josefina Dominguez.
May I have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez,
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. All right. So the next item for discussion and action is consider approval of the Board of Education Governance Manual. And I want to disclose on this, I pulled it off a consent because I wanted us to have a deeper conversation about it. There was so much going on in the policy meeting that we had a lot of changes. There was a flurry of conversation going from all over the place. And again, this governance manual is about us. This is about the work that we do together in terms of how we govern ourselves. And where we got ourselves hung up was really around the issue of recusal and the whole notion of that transparency when there is a conflict. I had a great conversation with Board Member Gonzalez this morning where we had a chance to sort of clarify some of those pieces in my mind. But what I left with after that meeting is that I was not happy that it just left sort of some of us feeling very unsettled, because this isn't a place for us to be unsettled. This is a really important piece. And so when I go back and I look at the whole issue of recusal, and we took out the language. So on the gifts section, for example, we'll start first with the gifts section. We put a limit on there, what it was $250. We have to report that back. And Board Member Gonzalez helped me remember this morning, but we said, yes, we would report the gifts, but we didn't say and recuse ourselves. And so, and what I want to remind everybody is that language and recuse ourselves doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be somebody on here who's going to say, you need to recuse yourself, because the recusal comes at the level of us and our integrity. This is about us as individuals and making that decision. Is this a conflict? Do I have a perceived or a real conflict on this? I'm going to recuse myself. And so it's us at our decision making that piece at that point on the gifts. I like the idea of the gifts, and I think we all had agreement on that in terms of the gift section, that $250 amount made sense. Board Member Gonzalez, do you want to add anything else to that? And then we'll get to the next one, because I think this is the first one, right?
Thank you. I think the only thing I would add is just in terms of specificity. So it is, and in part, I think part of what was confusing is we did a lot of wordsmithing and reordering as well. So in 4F, the Code of Conduct, it's number 3, where we say board members will adhere to the provisions of the New Mexico Gift Act. And then we also say board members will if board members receive or accept loans or gifts over $250, they will disclose it to board services and peer board members. What we don't have in here, to President Montoya Cordova's point, is that we will recuse ourselves from any votes relating to the individuals or organizations that have provided the gifts. And so if we were to make a specific amendment, which I would do as a friendly amendment proposal tonight, is that we add that language there to number 3, just another sentence that says board members will recuse from votes related to individuals or organizations that have provided them gifts over $250, in part because that's not a part of the New Mexico Gift Act. The New Mexico Gift Act is very specific and maybe a little convoluted, but it doesn't actually say that local officials like us would have to recuse. And so I would just make that specific request for number 3.
And that's on page, I'm like, oops.
Page 11.
Page 11. Okay. So I'll open it. How do people, let's just stop with that one. How do folks feel about that amendment to that particular one?
So I do have a question. I mean, this is what I brought up at the last time. I went to New York to a conference that was sponsored jointly by the American Federation of Teachers and the National Coalition for Community Schools. And so that was paid for by me. What does that mean? I have no problem reporting that. I think all of us probably attend things. I know Peggy goes to NALEO conferences. I don't know if any of that portion for her is paid for. Hopefully we all go to conferences of one sort or another that deepens our knowledge. So where does that lie when we say, what kind of gift? What kind of, I think that's the only thing I can point to that even comes close to anything amounting to a gift I can't even think of any others. but I think it needs clarification because it leaves open. Does that mean I can't ever vote on community school council or community school policy if my understanding has been deepened by going to this conference? And I'm sure, I mean, any number of us do attend one thing or another and have some portion of that paid for. So when we start talking recusal, I think it gets very gray, and I think it can go into that level of assumptions and how we present not just ourselves, but other board members to the community.
So Board Member Gonzalez, do you want to take a stab at that one before I do?
Well, I will, and I will say that you're correct. It is gray. So there isn't any measure, any definition, any legal opinion that we're going to be able to get that's going to provide a clear black or white answer on that. And so I think to Board President Montoya Cordova's comments, it is about our own discretion, our own decision. And so I think in the example that you led, should a vote on community schools come before the board, you could certainly say, I just want to call out, I had an opportunity to attend this trip that was sponsored by community schools. And, however, I'm going to vote on this because whatever, the amount was this, or because I'm not, it's not related to this specific vote, or I'm not going to benefit in any way. There's a whole host of reasons why we might need to recuse or not recuse on any particular event. But again, there's no recusal police, there's no enforcement. It's to us. And I think the first step of this is really the transparency around reporting it and publicly sharing it with our peers. I think part of the thing is that really we don't have any idea what each other is doing, what trips are paid for by whom. And so the first step really is that transparency piece. And then I think as we get into it more, we'll begin to figure out, like, maybe we do need to tighten language, maybe we need to change it, maybe we need to get a legal opinion, maybe we need to something else. But the biggest point is around perception. And so I think if it were me, I would just want to ground it in public perception. Is there a chance that the public could perceive that me attending this trip paid for by this organization and then voting on an issue reflects a conflict of interest? I think if there's a chance the public might perceive that, then I would recuse.
I think that is incredibly vague because our community has different perspectives. And what some portion of our community might perceive as a conflict of interest, another portion of the community would not. In fact, might be support of whatever issue might be the very reason why they voted for us in the first place.
But I'd like to add a little bit to that though, too. So the policy we already have in place, or the procedure that's already in place, if there is a complaint about a perceived or a real conflict of interest, it does come to the board president. It does. I've already had an opportunity to deal with that. And I just want to add, this is just for context too. I do want to add that in the entire time, 2 years that I've been here doing this, I've had only one that has come before us as a potential conflict of interest. And we were able to deal with that. It's not, it wasn't scary, and it wasn't huge. I mean, it's not that big. So what I hear is being proposed is that it's not a bad idea for us to be able to just say, because it's already transparent in terms of who's making donations to us, and that's the whole other section. We already know who's making donations to us because it's already public record. We've already got that part listed out. But what is not public record is who is supporting us in different ways in our own professional development, or the ways that we're either getting gifts to support us, either to travel or to those things. I've never had that happen for me personally. I just want to say I've not even received a single scholarship. I wish I had. I do know I paid for a couple of things on my own, but it's not a horrible thing to do this, because what I do like, and what Board Member Gonzalez has said, is that it's just, and will recuse yourself. That is all up to us as board members still. It is on us. And one of the things that I am confident about with this particular board is that the integrity that each and every single one of us brings to our elected position is there. There is no doubt about that. I have no doubt that every single one of us has taken our oath of office extremely serious and has signed that oath of office and are extremely careful and cautious about the way that we comport ourselves and what we do. I would venture to guess there are probably opportunities that have been presented to us and we say, no, thank you. I'm just not going to do that because I don't want to be unduly influenced. I think that happens. So, and I trust that. That's like an affirmative assumption that I have about every single one of us on this board. And so for me personally, to add it at this point, after getting clarity on that and knowing what it means in terms of that recusal comes to us at an individual level, it's not somebody, it's not like Member Jackson saying, you're going to recuse yourself today. That's not how it works. It's really about us taking the responsibility for ourselves and for our behavior. So I just want to be really clear on that.
So what's the language again? I mean,
It's just to the section on 3.
right, what are we adding?
They will disclose it to the board services office and peer board members and recuse themselves. Correct?
Yep.
All right, so
And we could be more specific. We can say recuse themselves from votes related to the individual organization who provided the gift, or recuse themselves if there is a real or perceived conflict of interest. We could add whatever we want. I like the simpler the better with the and recuse themselves.
I like having if the conditional, if there's a perceived
Or real
or real
conflict.
or real, yeah.
Any other comments on that?
Well, I mean, the reality is, and I think that this has been demonstrated by members of this board of in the press, making certain tones of allegations of recusals, needs of recusals or conflicts of interest, especially when it comes to the negotiated agreement, collective bargaining agreements, and our employee unions. And I am willing to give grace to what I may perceive as conflicts of interest when it comes to any number of votes that we've taken. But I think there needs to be a level of respect that is not always shown, especially when it comes to our collective bargaining, our groups. And
I think that's part of the next section. So this one is just tied to the gifts. So let's unpack them separately.
So get these gifts, and I'm sorry, I didn't go back to the New Mexico Gift Act, though we went through it, I think extensively at the last, but briefly remind me how.
So let me read the language because we struck some out that was added in that was not part of the Gift Act. So it said board members would adhere to the provisions of the New Mexico Gift Act, period. If members receive or accept loans or gifts over 250, they will disclose it to the board services office and their peer members. It's where we stopped. And what we're adding here is just, and recuse themselves.
Recuse themselves if
Okay.
If there is a
Real or perceived conflict is what you want to add. Okay.
I would leave out real or perceived and simply state a conflict.
Okay. So if there is a conflict.
I like that.
So board members will recuse themselves if there is a conflict. Board Member Jackson, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with that.
Board Member Tapia Romero.
I'm good with it. I guess I want to remind us all too, we just talked about assumptions.
Mhm.
So like, let's keep that at the forefront of what we're trying to do moving forward, but I think the clearer we can be, the better.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think that just the one thing that I want to add, and I'm directly paraphrasing from an email that we got, because I thought it highlighted it so well. It makes sense for a member to recuse themselves from a vote if their student-centered lens has been focused elsewhere. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that our focus is on the students and that the perception is reality, right? That's the truth. And if the perception of the public is that we are not focused on the students, we are not focused on high ethical standards, then that is the reality. Whether it's true or not, that is their reality.
And also remembering assumptions. That, also remembering that, our assumption may be incorrect as well. So I think what I like about this and the reminder is that it goes back to guardrail number 1 on us, is that this is on us as a board member. So nobody is telling you, and nobody is saying, like I had mentioned, it doesn't, like, board member Jackson doesn't get to come to me tomorrow and say, I don't want you to vote on this because of blah, blah, blah. She could be checking an assumption about me, and I could be clarifying that assumption with her. Because as I had mentioned in my statement, if there is something that you perceive or you have concern about with me, just ask me. And so I think that's part of it is, but this is not to divide us. I think I want to make sure on that. This is not about dividing us or separating us from the community so that we're leading the community to believe that we're trying to hide something. I don't want that. I want it to be that, yes, we're okay with being transparent. There is not difficulty with that. That's not the issue. But more importantly, I think the only way that that can work, guys, the only way that can work is that if we can live in a lens of also checking our assumptions at the table and also working with a level of integrity and trust amongst ourselves. That's why this governance manual is so important. This is more about us than it is about, the community is watching us, the district is watching us, absolutely. But this has a lot more to say about who we are as a group of board members and not as individuals.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Mhm.
And what's even more important about that is that the individuals in these chairs are going to change. It is absolutely not about me sitting next to you or me sitting next to you. It's about the fact that these are going to change, and it's the board. It's not Courtney coming to Yolanda, right? It's board member District 7. So it is about the board. It's not about the individuals.
And when the new board comes together and they read this governance manual and there are assumptions that are being made, hopefully they can come and you guys can speak to each other and not make assumptions about each other. And if there is a shift that needs to be made, whoever the policy chair is or the board president is willing to listen to that and say, I hear these assumptions, these are not correct. I'm just going to say that's what I did after processing when we left. I didn't like the assumptions that were being made. And I'm trying to get to a point where we can have positive intent moving forward and assumptions that are based on that we live from this point of integrity and that we believe in the integrity of each other.
So I would actually not have an issue with the language that Courtney had. Because I think where our disagreement comes is how do we do that? And those are real substantive disagreements. I think what we have to share is that we are coming at it from an attitude of what's supporting our students And we have to give each other that grace, even though our outlook of how do we do that can be very substantively different. We have to make the assumption that we all are sitting here with the best interest of the students in APS in mind. And so I don't have a problem with the language that you had, because it leaves it says, I mean, and having just come back from Council of Great City Schools, I'll tell you, there were many opportunities to take lots of expensive gifts and dinners and drinks from any number of vendors. And it was avoid those like the plague, as the people sitting up here, because it's not our job. It's not our job. But when it comes to what deepens our knowledge of what's going to support students, it becomes a very different conversation.
So are you offering an amendment or?
Are you offering an amendment?
Well,
of
I'm
you
not sure
just
what
read?
I said.
You-
Oh, what I
Oh,
read.
that's what you read. It was
Oh.
off the letter that
If
we
the
received.
acceptance of a gift distracts us from our focus on the well-being of students.
Oh, okay. So, okay. So if there is, let's see, if the conflict distracts from,
About, and will recuse themselves if the gift distracts us from our mission to serve
students.
I think we're making it more difficult than it needs to be. I was just kind of
Paraphrasing a letter that we
yeah.
got.
I'm totally fine with it being if there's a conflict, because I think from what you just said, right? The conflict would be decided internally, right? That if we're not focused on students, if there is this perception, I'm worried about adding too much extra to a policy.
I agree with that. I think keeping the language is if there is a conflict.
Did you see that? It was a nice moment we just had.
I think we have some consensus and agreement over here. That's great. Okay. All right. So let's move from number 3. Because the next one is is it number 5, Board Member Gonzalez? The board members are subject to the New Mexico Governmental Conduct Act and will in all instances conduct themselves with the highest professional ethical standards and will not violate federal, state, or local laws.
It was number 6.
It was number 6. Okay.
or will publicly disclose any campaign contributions.
Okay. So each year, board members will complete
The next one.
The next one. Okay. God, I'm telling you, it's like, I'm looking at the mock-up document. So board members will publicly disclose any campaign contributions before voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made the contributions. And we stopped there. So this is the one that was the juicy one, as Board Member Gonzalez would say. This is a little bit more complex, because I believe before we had a dollar amount on this. And the way I read it now here is it doesn't matter what campaign contribution at this point, there is no dollar amount. It's just that we're going to publicly disclose any campaign contribution before voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made the contributions. And the language that we removed is the dollar amount, but more importantly, what we removed is and recuse themselves. So this is the one that's a little bit more complex. And we did have a conversation. We kind of sped through it a little bit, but this is the one where campaign contributions that are made by political action committees are not included, because that's the way that the Government Conduct Act is written, correct?
Not necessarily. It's because the Governmental Conduct Act doesn't address that. It's more that because the entity that makes the the campaign contribution is different from the entity that the vote is on.
Okay.
But the sentiment is the same. The rationale was not, but. So I think the point being that we talked about, as an example, donations from COPE committees or PACs, particularly related to the union, and clarified that if you were to get a donation from a PAC or from a COPE or anything like that, that would not qualify as an indicator or as a measure for you having to recuse from the vote on, for example, the collective bargaining agreement, because they're different entities.
Okay. So, so does that clarify for some folks where we are? And what we didn't state in here is we just didn't add and that clarification in there. I mean, we didn't state it explicitly, but that is what's understood as part of the Governmental Conduct Act. I'm still, you kind of confused me a little bit because you said it doesn't state that there, but where does it state it for us?
It doesn't. It was part of the legal counsel's review. So there was the question asked, well, how would we handle donations from PACs? And the response from that legal review is those are different entities, so that wouldn't count.
Okay.
It was, and Ashley clarified it too, that they are separate. We don't, the district does not negotiate with the COPE committee.
Okay.
The district negotiates with the Teachers Federation, for
union.
instance, or CWA,
Okay.
or the classified staff.
So on number 6, because the only thing we took out was a dollar amount, because the way that it's written to me, and this is me looking at this from this perspective, there is no dollar amount on this now. Now there is no bar. So it's any contribution before voting matters involving individual. So I feel like the standard is even higher than what we had initially had in there. How do folks feel about this one if we just, I'm just trying to get a feel for like, what would help strengthen this and create more unity and trust amongst us around this particular statement? I'm just going to ask that flat out.
So I'm not sure, sorry, that it was the intention to remove the dollar amount. So I think that may have been an error in the edits. I think all of the conversation was really around removing the sentence that required recusal. But I don't know what the minutes reflect or if that's others' memories. But it did read, and I don't have it in front of me, I did have that $1,000 amount in the individual or aggregate. And then there was the separate component around and will recuse from votes related to individuals or organizations that provided those contributions.
And what was the rationale for the way that it was written? So just help remind me on that at the $1,000. I can't remember.
Well, it was a specificity. So I think there were questions around, well, what amount, what qualifies? And so that I think in that meeting, we said, well, it could be 5,000, it could be 200, it could be 500, let's decide. And there seemed to be consensus around 1,000. And then we did have a conversation too around the individual or aggregate. So sometimes there's contributions that come in multiple over a course of time. So you might get 250, 250, 500. And so that would count. And so we wanted to clarify that as well.
Okay.
And I think also just to clarify where the $1,000 came from also is also mentioned in the New Mexico Gift Act. So it, again, like the continuity of having 250 and 1,000 are both in the Gift Act. And so that's kind of where it came from. So if what I would maybe offer as a friendly amendment, excuse me, is board members will publicly disclose any campaign contribution in excess of $1,000 before voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made that contribution, and will recuse themselves if there is a conflict.
Okay.
Which is exactly what we just said for the 250. Okay.
But I think you missed the individual or aggregate point.
I'm sorry. sorry. Board members will board members will publicly disclose any campaign contributions in excess of $1,000 in
Access.
whether, I'm totally blanking, whether in,
Individual or in the aggregate.
thank you, whether an individual or in the aggregate before voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made the contribution, and will recuse themselves if there is a conflict.
So describe for me the individual and the aggregate. I don't want to seem silly, so, but I'm kind of blanking on that one.
So I think, so for example, there was a union fundraiser for me, and this is what I was going to ask. I had $1,400 come from people who donated $2.50 and $5 and $10. So the aggregate of that is,
But it's not an individual or an but it's involving individuals or organizations. Okay, I get that. Okay.
So it seems like there are two different things though, because those, if I write you a check for $5 and another individual writes you a check for $5 for your campaign, those are coming from the individual. If it's given, and that's not, let's take Jane's Corporation. Jane's does work. We approve contracts for, they do work, construction work. So if Jane's gave to me $100 this month, $100 next month, $100 the month after that, and it's coming from, it's easier to see in a corporation that we actually would be signing, doing business with and having an actual contract with. If you add up all of those and it equals $1,000, I probably should not be voting on the Jane's contract, on the RFP that accepts Jane's as the contractor. And that is much easier to see than the pack that the developers or the realtors have, where everyone who's a realtor voluntarily writes a check to this organization that's their PAC, or the COPE committee, or the preschool provider PAC, if there is one, whatever it is, that those are separate. Those are separate, and we're saying that those are out of the picture anyway, because it's the PAC and it's not, we're not signing a contract with any of them. So it's much easier to see a law firm that gives you.
So circling back then with the language and the change that was added in there, how do you all feel about that? What causes pause, if any, or does it cause any pause?
I have no.
No pause. Barbara, you're okay?
Okay.
Josefina?
I think it's fine.
Crystal? I know she's got a question mark on her face. You weren't here for the last conversation. It's okay. It's great. This is important.
So I guess I just need to get clarification, because I guess this has been the main example. So we're saying with this new policy, if a PAC or if the union makes a contribution over 1,000, those aren't counted into this particular policy.
Correct.
And that's based on the New Mexico.
It's based on
Or just based on us.
It's based on a legal interpretation on the law around that. It's legal.
Okay. Okay.
Asian breakfast buffets are better.
Whoops.
Ooh,
Asian buffets are better.
Asian buffets are better.
They never pushed the link in the message.
All right.
So are you still contemplating?
No, I guess
Okay.
because that's the legal verbiage behind it, then we're arguing about stuff that we have no control to change.
Well, vendors,
Right.
I mean, right? Is that?
Well,
Well, no, because the main issue I believe that board member Peterson had was around the contract, around with the union. But knowing that that's not the issue, is there an issue?
Right. There is no issue.
it still requires disclosure, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
still requires disclosure.
the portal on the Secretary of State's office lists every single dime that we get.
No, I
At
agree,
least
but it
if
says-
we're being legal, it reports, it records every single dime.
But
we
this
get.
just says before voting, so obviously before that
Members
comes
will
up, we would need to, because we've never disclosed that before a vote of saying, hey, I've received this contribution for this amount. So now we would do that, but it wouldn't, but the board member could still vote on the matter. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and.
Right? Yeah,
And
okay.
you can just disclose.
So like if I got $10,000 from McDonald's Corporation, I don't know. I would have to say before voting, I would have to say, I received $10,000 from McDonald's Corporation.
If you're voting on.
Right.
Right.
something.
And will recuse myself if there is a conflict. Now, if there's no conflict,
There's no.
because it's the McDonald's PAC, then there's no conflict and I can still vote, but I still have to say I received $10,000.
From the PAC?
Mm-hmm. You still have to disclose.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to become a confessional every time we go into, and in particular, it's for me, it's every time we vote on a CBA.
Well, I don't think it's for the purpose even of us, but it's just what we're talking about being transparent for the community. No one's saying you can't vote.
Right.
Like everyone still has that option, but it's just making sure we're being transparent.
There,
But when are we all participating in these expressions of transparency? I get that it would happen when we're voting on CBA, but when else? So are
Yeah,
we
Like,
targeting?
it really just depends on where your contributions are, where subsequent board members' contributions are. And, like, I think we could play through lots of different scenarios and what ifs, but the main principle, again, is really around public trust and rebuilding that public trust. So I think that's what we need to remember. I think, like, we can continue to provide lots of different examples. But like, it's gonna be hard to know. It's always gonna change.
So when would, I'm just trying to think of other votes that have come before the board. When would board members, current board members, have to disclose campaign contributions from foundations or from political parties or?
Well, I guess here's a good, considering we have this issue coming up next week, we have an issue on charter schools. Say if the charter schools went and gave a donation that was significant and we're getting ready to vote on their contract with us, you would need to say that. And you would need to be able to either more likely recuse yourself, from that because you received that type of contribution. I don't believe any of us received those, but I don't know.
Well, what about contributions that are made? Because I think we're focused on, I think where we get stuck on is the CBA. Let's just be real clear. And because that's where my assumptions are taking me, is that the CBA is what the issue is right here, and specifically on the teacher's contract. But I think that's where the assumptions lie, because I think there's also importance in disclosing contributions that have been made also that might have been anti-union. How do those get disclosed? And is it also, would that be considered matters involving that organization as well? because it could also, be clouding a perspective there. I think I'm stuck on this whole notion because I really feel like the only thing that we're like that it zeroes in on is like the big target for me is the CBA. And I think that's where we're stuck. And I think that's the one that's making us feel divided.
Well, I mean, I foresee a time when there would only be members who, like me, having to disclose, and perception in the public is, oh, well, board member Dominguez is always having to disclose her alignment with the unions, and nobody else is having to do that. And all of a sudden that makes me a target. And perception, like you pointed out, board member Jackson, is reality. And that gets very dangerous.
And I think a lot of it comes when we talk about the dollar amount. Like, I think there is this, and this is my opinion, there is a significant difference. Say, like, if you raised 40,000 and 35,000 came from one group, it looks odd. It does look like, if this group did not give you money, how would that have changed your campaign or your election? It does. And I'm just being very, very honest here, versus if a group gave you $1,500 out of your 40,000.
And I wish I had raised that much.
Yeah.
That was
Times are
not my
different.
campaign.
Times are different.
Substantially larger coffers than
Yeah.
others of us.
And I guess that's
My
what
contribution was not that high.
My concern.
For math's sake, it was a math example. It was a math.
Okay, but
My community is different.
and my community
Yeah,
is
my
very
community
different.
is different too.
And I'm not going to be, I mean, that's my lived reality. I'm here because I am a voice for immigrants. I am a voice for working poor, for working professionals. But I don't want to have to be the only one confessing myself.
But I feel like we all are. Like, that's public.
Well, I don't think all of us
Don't
will.
assume. Do not assume.
On this,
Call you on it. Don't do it. Not right.
I think
Well-
on this particular one, I think it narrows it a lot more. I think there's a lot more narrowing that could occur. And, board member Mueller-Aragon is not here, but I remember her specifically stating on this one, that whole notion of, do we start to constrict just, who's able to vote on the board, and does it restrict us as a board to be able to really do our work? So I think that's also the other issue that become problematic.
That reminds me that there was more to the sentence, because there was like a comma, unless it interferes with the ability of the board to carry out its duties.
I have
So
it.
You have it, okay.
I have it. It says, I can read my writing. And the board unless the board agrees the recusal will result in an inability to fulfill its legal obligations.
So that's what was in the original draft. We can certainly add that back into whatever amendment we consider for this evening. I think, as I said before, like, there's lots of different scenarios, and we don't know what's going to happen with the next board, and we don't know what's going to happen with future political contributions. For me, it's not about the CBA. I feel like we resolved that there's the difference between the Political Action Committee and the actual Teachers Federation that negotiates on behalf of the district. So for me, it is really around the transparency related to other matters. So certainly it can be about the CBA for other folks, but for me, I think like an example would be the example that Barbara provided around the construction companies. So if I have lots of construction companies giving me $500, $500, $500, and then the vote comes before me, I may not be conflicted at all because I really don't care about construction, but I should say I have received $1,500 from this company, and therefore I will recuse myself from this vote. If that would lead to an issue with the lack of quorum or something, then we could discuss that. But I think it's not going to happen so frequently that we get ourselves into a position that we're not able to vote. And so I think we're all sort of making conjecture about possible what if scenarios, which doesn't serve us well.
Except that I heard a difference, and I just want to say that because I agree with what you just explained, Board Member Gonzalez. I agree 100% with what you just said. And then Board Member Jackson, I heard something different because you said, but if it is the campaign contribution from the PAC, you do have to disclose it. So that's, I think, what is getting us hung up. Like, is it? So I think, and what I worry about is that it's not clearly stated. And so what is it that we're actually agreeing to? Because I agree with the way that you've presented it, but I heard something different in the way that Board Member Jackson described it.
I'm very comfortable clarifying the language and having Member Jackson reread it. And what I was responding to was the recusal language specifically, because I thought we were in agreement already on the disclosure language.
I heard something different on the disclosure
Yeah, I'm
language.
not- I want it clear that that PACs are not included here.
I think it would be disingenuous to think that they're not board members who received contributions from PACs based on not supporting the CBA. And I
think that's
so
another
that-
assumption,
I think
though.
I think that speaks to Board Member Dominguez's concern that, does that mean I'm the only person who has to disclose? It goes back to, we have to assume that all of us, with our myriad of points of view, our myriad of life experiences, that there's no one sitting on this board that did not run for their position with the fundamental intention of serving students in APS. And how we go about doing that can be different. And so I think that speaks to the difference between whatever the PAC is and direct contributions from a particular entity.
So thank you, Board Member Peterson, for that and just reminding us that. I agree. I mean, I think we all, and as I stated initially, come to this with a tremendous amount of integrity. So I think we're just trying to find statement here that is also something that we're all making the same assumption about, because I think that I don't think we're still real clear on that in terms of what is being disclosed. And that's the part that I got lost on. So Board Member Jackson, I think Board Member Gonzalez asked you to read what was the original language? Is that what we're looking for?
Okay, so the original language was, all right, board members will publicly disclose any campaign contributions in excess of $1,000, whether in individual or in the aggregate, before voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made the contribution, and will recuse themselves if there is a conflict, unless the board agrees the recusal will result in an inability to fulfill its legal obligations.
So, and I guess checking our assumptions, any campaign contribution is, I think, because what's is board members will publicly disclose any campaign contributions. I keep looking at the word any.
In excess of.
In excess, but any campaign contribution in excess. So when you all hear the word any campaign contribution, what does that mean to you? Is it all of them?
All campaign contributions I got over $1,000.
okay, so, and that would be, so let's say the union gave you $2,000.
Uh-huh.
That's not, I'm trying to be really
Yeah.
serious. Yeah,
Yeah, then I would say the union gave me $2,000. And I will recuse myself if there is a conflict.
But the union didn't and can't. Because there are also, just like there are legal definitions of.
I'm sorry, that was my
equities and
misstep,
tax.
Board Member
Yeah.
Peterson. That was my misstep. I don't want to get caught up in a wordsmith here, but
Yeah.
that was my misstep. So if a PAC, if the teachers PAC or the co-PAC or the communication workers or the police union made a campaign contribution that was over $1,000 and it's before us on their CBA, you are stating then that we would disclose it and recuse ourselves.
No, I'm saying they're two separate things. I'm saying there's disclosure. And then there's recusal if there is a conflict. They're two separate issues.
Okay. If there is
So
a
if there is a conflict.
okay.
Or unless the board agrees that recusal will result in an inability to fulfill its legal obligation.
So
So what I, like, I know we're not supposed to play this out, but here I am, like, let's play this out. We're creating all sorts of game playing and gamesmanship for future elections. Like, it's just about, we are going to state contributions over $1,000,
if there's a
comma,
conflict.
and if there's a conflict, we will recuse. They are two separate issues.
Okay.
They are not flowing issues. Here's the issue.
Okay.
Here's the first. And if there's a conflict, we will recuse unless it results in an inability to perform our legal obligations.
And if there's a conflict or if that needs to be stated, again, the integrity falls on the board members to do that. Okay, got it. Okay, I'm clear. So the integrity still falls onto the board member.
And we're still with any?
Yeah,
And
because so board members will publicly disclose any campaign, I can't even talk, campaign contributions over $1,000, blah, 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 before voting on matters. If there is a perceived, or if there is a conflict, I should just,
so, but
it adds the same language that we had it to the Gift Act at the top.
Yeah, it's before voting on matters related to that individual or organization.
If there is a conflict.
so are we?
No, the conflict is separate.
Are we excluding PACs? That's what I'm not clear about.
Yes, because there is no conflict because it's a different
okay.
organization.
Okay.
But that's not what that says, right?
Again, it's the board member who is going to be responsible for deciding that.
Any campaign contribution?
Yes, and recusing or stating it or saying I have a conflict. But that, again, it doesn't mean, I'll pick on board member Tapia Romero, doesn't get to say to me, you must refrain from voting. Cannot do that because it is up to the individual and their integrity. And I will just say this. So as board president, if a conflict comes in, that there's, somebody complaining about a conflict, then that conflict has to be resolved by the board president and the individual. Could happen. I will just say, I think by stating that this will be done, and if we are holding ourselves to that level, I'm a person of integrity. I will disclose if I need to, but if there's no reason for me to, I won't.
And so.
Because there's no conflict.
Which to your point, Board Member Montoya Cordova, that specific it is the very next section of the governance manual, where it talks about if there are board member concerns,
Right.
that's where that is all written out as to how the board president will address those concerns.
So future boards don't have the benefit of this conversation, all the details going into this. And so I'm looking at this strictly as the words that I see before me. Board members will publicly disclose any campaign contributions outside of PACs before voting on, I think you have to be more, there's a clarity here because board members will, in the future, will come and look at that and say, you have to disclose.
We're making an assumption that could
Even
occur.
it's-
What I'm
The
hoping,
language is related to matter, individuals or I don't have it in front of me anymore, related to individuals or organizations who provided that contribution. There is that specific language and it was pulled from the SOFG scoring rubric. So I was just going to try to pull that up, but there was that specific language in the original draft. And so I'll try to get it.
and I wanted to say to the assumption on that, Board Member Dominguez, is because the new board members coming in, I want to be really thoughtful about new board members, because there are going to be at least two, at least two new board members that are coming in, and taking into account the piece of how difficult it was for the orientation around the shift that we had with this transition the last couple of years. I would hope that what will occur, because I know I'm going to be part of this, I'm going to help on this part, is with the orientation with new board members coming in, is to provide that clarity and to provide that support to help them understand these pieces. And what I'm going to assume is that the board members that are here are also going to be assisting these new board members to also help them understand this piece and help them around interpretation as they're coming in through that. It's not going to be perfect at all. And there may be concerns on one particular member feels that another member should have disclosed, and whoever is board president is going to be the one that's going to have to deal with that, because that's how that's going to all play out. I'm hoping that it doesn't, because what I'm hoping that this document does more of than create that division is to create a sense of like how we just operate ourselves, and that there's going to be, as Board Member Peterson was talking about, this whole notion of just giving grace. There has to be a period of grace on this, and not this constant, it can't be seen as division, because remember, what happens in the boardroom happens in the classroom. And if this board is continually seen as at odds at that, it's like one side versus the other, that's not going to be helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for our relationship with the union. It's just not helpful. It's not helpful for our parents, and it's certainly not helpful for our students. So I think just having this clarity, having some agreement on this, but also making a commitment to check our assumptions and also to check for integrity, and just helping. I think the most important part that we can do as a team is also support each other to build our integrity, and not beat us down that you don't have integrity, because that's the worst thing that could happen. It's a team of 8, which includes the superintendent. And if that's not working in that way, then it's not useful. And I don't think we will get to the outcomes that we need to get to. So I just want to say, I don't have any difficulty with the way that the language is stated, with the clarification that Board Member Gonzalez made around, that understanding, because 4 of you are definitely going to know that you made that statement, that it does not include the PACs. And that's on your integrity on that.
So I just wanted to provide the language from the SOFG evaluation. So it's under unity and trust, and it's in order to meet student outcomes focus. It says the board has included language in its ethics, and this is where we got it from. The board
Okay.
has included language in its ethics and conflict of interest statement requiring that board members fully recuse themselves from matters involving individuals or organizations who made campaign contributions to them or who appointed them. And so if you recall, we took the language who appointed them because it wasn't particularly relevant and it was confusing. And then we added the $1,000 amount, we added the individual or aggregate point. But the key thing here is we'll publicly disclose any campaign contribution over $1,000, whether individual or aggregate, when voting on matters involving individuals or organizations who made contributions to them. That's the period. And then the subsequent sentence is, and will recuse themselves if conflict of interest interferes with their ability, will refuse themselves. And then that piece that Courtney had around, unless it interferes with their ability to fulfill legal obligations.
Mhm.
What if organizations got changed to business entities?
It doesn't, for me personally, I don't know how that distinguishes it. I mean, I don't,
Well, didn't Ashley bring up in her explanation, and I don't know if this was, I don't know if this was to the group or just to me, but when she wrote that, she mentioned very explicitly that vendors were the problem in Texas. And so I asked, I don't remember why, I wish you were watching. I said, why not just say vendors? I mean, be explicit.
So one of the things that I know about New Mexico and I know about our, let's just say APS as a whole, as a public entity, one of the things that's so great about some of our procurement processes for the state and the procurement laws is that it's very tight. So we don't have similar issues that other states are having where it is kind of a willy-nilly and those things kind of occur. So for us, that's not what's happening at all. I mean, even RFPs that come to us for like capital improvement, there's a blind committee that's looking at that. They score it, they all stuff. And the only thing we're looking at is a recommendation that they made that we had no part in. So we didn't influence who was selected or how they were selected or how they were scored. So that part, I'm not worried about that. I mean, I think, and we kind of were able to put that to rest. I guess I'm struggling with this one. I hear the struggle because I hear that there's some fear. There's still like, there's an unmet need here. I'm trying to use my empathetic listening, that there's an unmet need for you, Board Member Dominguez, in terms of the way that this is stated, that is leaving you a little bit uncertain. Am I correct? Is it uncertain or a little fearful?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't pick and choose our assumptions. Right? I mean, you're going to assume that moving forward, we will hold on to our integrity.
Absolutely.
I don't have the benefit of that. You're right. You're right. And I'm keenly, I mean, what is still with me is history. I'm keenly aware of August, was it 2023, our first
22.
or 22, the uproar over the CBA, and there was very much a union, anti-union rhetoric going on, and that informs my discomfort right now. And to that point, I don't think there has been a move to ameliorate in any way that very public rift with our workforce. And it's a workforce that we absolutely need. And again, I don't want to be the only well, I know now that this, I can say number 6 does not apply to PACs. I know that. But when I first came on board, I didn't know that. This is all new, and I'm thinking ahead to people who are new to this experience, who will not are navigating new waters because they're not political animals. They're common everyday citizens who rise to the occasion to do the job. And so that's the lens I'm looking at all of this, the wording. So yes,
So if you could make this friendlier or to help allay your fears, what would you add? And it does not include?
I would be explicit about PACs. Yeah, I would be explicit about that.
Board Member Gonzalez, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say you could be explicit, but we don't vote on PACs. So I guess my issue is it seems unnecessary to me to put in the qualifier on something that would never come before us.
And so it's really more around the education then for board members to understand that that's not when it's going to be required.
Right. And again, as you mentioned, we're doing an orientation for the new board members. They will be oriented to this governance manual. And so part of the conversation can be, I'd like to point your attention to number 6. We had a robust deliberation about this, and I want to clarify for you, because one of the points that we discussed was the difference between a PAC and a union or that would negotiate with the district. And because donations come from the PAC and not the union, that's an example of something that would not apply. However, a donation from a textbook company would apply because we do vote on those.
Okay.
So that takes care of one. Yeah, and that would be part of, is that part of onboarding?
Yes.
Okay. So duly noted. There's still the history piece of it, right? Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm leaning toward being okay with this. But I just want to make it very clear that we have work to do as a board with a significant part of our workforce. And just when we get to the CBA next time around, I hope that ugly rift is dealt with, you know,
And
differently.
it's not part of this. I mean, that it doesn't become part of this. This doesn't become an issue is what
Right.
you're saying in that conversation. Okay. So board member Dominguez is leaning towards a yes on this, knowing that we're going to have this comprehensive orientation. We've got a commitment from board member Gonzalez, who we've just heard said that that's how this orientation would take place and the conversation would occur. We've got our board services office here, so that's going to be duly noted. Board member Tapia Romero, how do you feel about that at this point?
I feel good about it. I'll leave my personal comments alone, but I feel good about it.
Okay. Board member Jackson?
I agree with I feel very good about it, and I think it is something that needs to be done to just make common sense provisions to maintain public trust.
Okay. Board Member Peterson.
I can live with it. I think we live in a contentious time where what we do does get taken out of context. What we do does get misinterpreted. And so I continue to have concerns that it can be misrepresented and that individual board members can be called out and shamed in some way. And it comes down to the integrity of the board, and that's regardless of whoever is sitting here. This is going forward. But with the clarifications, I can live with it.
Okay. Okay.
Can call for a vote?
No, not yet. Because we have to go through the rest of the darn document. So we had some other, so those were the two areas that I wanted to come back on because, and I just want to say, I am grateful to hear that because I think that it embodies the willingness to be a collective. And that's what's critical in this. It's not easy to get to consensus. Everybody's making some, is making some concessions at this point or putting their fears behind and letting their assumptions go. That's a hard thing to do. And so I just want to say you guys are gonna make me cry because I think that's what we work for. And that's the important part that we're showing out to the community, that there's that willingness to do that. We have compromised on so many things, a lot this whole year. And I think it just demonstrates the growth, that this board has gone through and the pieces that we're willing to have hard conversations about. And it's important. And I'm glad that we took the time to do this because I did not want to see the community to see us in this way of being at odds with this on this, because I don't think that's where we were at all. We just didn't have an opportunity to really unpack it and really clarify where we were. So the whole document was presented. I know that our wonderful analysts made a bunch of changes and all the board members had a chance to look at that. Did we capture all of the changes appropriately and accurately? I'm gonna defer to Board Member Gonzalez since this was the document that you had presented as part of policy.
Actually, it was the document from the Ad Hoc Committee on Governance, which was Member Jackson and Member Dominguez. I've just facilitated that meeting. However, I will still take advantage of the opportunity to answer the question since I have the floor. I do think that they captured all of the edits. There was one thing that we did not get to in the meeting, and it was my oversight as the chair. So there was an additional document that Board Services had provided with us, which was a proposed additional section to the governance manual. And if you recall, when we did our self-evaluation, there was a component in the unity and trust section that said the board has passed a policy in their governance manual, which requires the superintendent to provide, if the superintendent has provided information to one board member, they shall provide it to all board members. So Board Services prepared language for that. And then in the course of the policy committee meeting, I just completely forgot about it because we spent so much time on this other stuff. And so what I'd like to propose is that rather than adding a whole new section, we just add a sentence under 3B, which is superintendent's responsibilities, superintendent role. So if you look at section 3B, there's 5 things that are there for superintendent role. I would propose that we add number 6, which just reads, information provided by the superintendent to one board member is provided to all board members. And that would allow us to get that 1 point on the SOFG evaluation. But it was also another oversight from the policy committee meeting.
That falls on page 7, right? Okay, page 7. So it's just going to be the 6th bullet point. Okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overlook the ad hoc folks. Did we capture all of your revisions? Yes,
So I'm eager to a friendly amendment to the theory of action,
okay,
rather than using if, the conditional, making a more forceful pitch for a more forceful word like when. And this I borrowed from my time at the Council of Great City Schools. I saw this in another theory of action and se me prendió el foco, like the light went off. I was like, oh my God, it's just a simple.
it's
if
more
to when.
affirmative, yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to propose that.
So let's stop there. How do folks feel about that friendly amendment? That's on page 6. Theory of action is when APS mobilizes around a clear plan, yada, 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 and when APS cultivates, and when APS establishes clear, distinct systems, then Albuquerque Public Schools will improve student outcomes. How do folks feel about that?
That's fine.
Okay. Barbara?
Sure.
Okay, I think we've got that. All right. Anything else, Board Member Dominguez?
I'm going to go ahead and mention that there was a document that got, I don't know, we lost it. We didn't include it, and it's on board communications. We came up with this back with Brenda Yeager. There was a list, and Johanna King had that document. I'm just wondering how people would feel about it. We agreed to it. It was that one of our first meetings. Do you have that ready? Like,
And you're proposing that we add that to this?
yeah, because it was an agreement between us about how we would communicate. Like, it was the one that said no surprises. I think we had a facilitator at that meeting.
So it was the norms that we created with Ian Escabel at our first retreat. And we did bring that to Ashley as part of this process as well. And she said that didn't really apply for this governance manual, which is why it was not included.
Because it seems to me, and I don't know if I have the lifeline with Ashley out there. She's probably listening to us, but I would assume that board norms would, and this is an assumption I'm making, but it seems when the new board comes on too, is like really checking those norms and coming back together and circling around those pieces. I don't know. I mean, that's what I would think if I was leading a team again. I mean, that's what I would do, but
board norm.
because the board norms could shift out.
It was that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, board member.
I'm trying to read when I can talk. It was that, as well as Ashley really wanting to focus us on policy. So
Okay.
those norms aren't policy, so they wouldn't be part of our policy governance manual. So she suggested you could certainly write norms related to how you interact with each other, how you communicate with each other, but that's different from policy. You don't write policy around behaviors.
And it
Okay.
seems to me like,
Yes.
again, like that would be something that as the new board comes together, having that retreat together, sort of refreshing all of that and coming to center as a team on that. Okay. Anything else, board member Dominguez? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like gloss over, but does that meet your needs there?
I think so, although I'm scrolling here. Is it possible to have a policy around cell phone usage?
We had it in there. Why did it get taken out? In the original, didn't it say a no phone usage during meetings? I thought I saw that.
That was similarly Ashley's point around we shouldn't write policy around individual behavior.
Okay.
Well, I would
don't
say,
think it wasn't in a policy. It might have been somewhere in a procedural directive.
Okay,
somewhere,
okay.
but Again, because that's our job is policy and.
And I just want to remind the board that we probably do need to check ourselves on that too, because texting during a board meeting could be perceived as getting information in your phones could be IPRED. So it's very important because there could be the perception that there was a conversation that was taking place with somebody else and your phones are subject to an IPRA. I got that just from an attorney the other day. So just be careful with that. So if it was not part of this and she didn't say we could legislate, I mean, we can't put that in a policy, that's fine.
okay, that's it.
The only thing that I had, and this is coming from the meeting at the SOFG meeting on the cascading of responsibilities, and I'm trying to find my page where I put this in. But on the cascading of responsibilities that are cascaded down from the board down to the superintendent, one of the things that they recommended very specifically was that cascading responsibility to the superintendent to actually prepare a budget that needs to be presented to, and I think we have that we review it, but the superintendent is responsible for preparing that budget in accordance with like state laws and regulations, and then presenting it to the board for review and approval. And in ours, it's got to be reviewed and approved against our goals and our guardrails. So that was the only one that I left away from the SOFG meeting. Just remember that because that one was specifically called out.
In the delegation policies?
Yeah, in the delegation, and help me. I thought I had a,
It should be at the top.
yeah, I think I had it in, here it is, delegation policies in the superintendent's role, but I'm trying to get my comment and it won't come up. So, and I think that's where I put it, is in the superintendent's role, is just, we say preparing recommendations for policies to be adopted, but in accordance with laws and regulation, the superintendent will be responsible for preparing a budget. And then present, that because they are the ones that he is the one, or he or she is the one that's responsible for sort of like following all those rules and processes and preparing that budget. And we review it. We're not abdicating our responsibility for the budget, but we're cascading it down to the superintendent to actually do the work. And I think for transparency purposes for the community to understand is that we don't prepare the budget ourselves. We review it, but the superintendent is responsible for preparing it.
So it would take.
So I think it,
Go ahead, Board Member Gonzalez.
so it's on page 7 under 3B. Number 2 would become, in accordance with laws and regulations, the superintendent will be responsible for preparing an annual budget and recommendations for policies to be adopted by the board, comma, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to add that language in because it was just one that I walked away with. And I think that was the only substantive change that I had on the manual. Board Member Jackson, you look like you have a question or comment. You're good?
Been staring at this thing for a long.
I know you've been looking at it for a while. How about Board Member Peterson? Are you good with everything that we've added? Board Member Gonzalez, anything else that we need to add? You're good? Okay, so our wonderful analyst, Jessica. We added, so I think all of the other changes then, the edits, the lines, everything that we did in there, you're good with, and I believe the board is fine. We'll probably just see it in one final form. Go ahead.
Madam President, I do have a question regarding page 11. With the recusal, were you wanting to add in the language of unless the Board of Education decides that recusal will prevent the board from fulfilling its
Yes.
legal duty?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that was my only question.
Okay. All right. Great work, ladies. I just want to say great work because this was hard work and I appreciate everybody, I know it's taken us a little longer than we thought. You all probably saw this agenda and thought, woohoo, we're going to get out here early. But no, this was important. All right. So
like to
I will
make a
consider a motion for approval of the Board of Education Governance Manual.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of the Board of Education Governance Manual.
I will second it.
May I have a roll call, please?
Danielle Gonzalez,
Yes.
Barbara Peterson,
Yes.
Crystal Tapia Romero,
Yes.
Josefina Dominguez.
Yes.
Courtney Jackson.
Yes.
Yolanda Montoya Cordova.
Yes. Yay.
Hallelujah.
I know, that's wonderful. All right. Superintendent, you're up. Our next item is just a report from the superintendent.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, I'm happy to be with you tonight. It's been interesting to listen to you all for the last few hours. So I just have, I knew we'd be at the end of a long meeting, so I just have 2 items to highlight, although the district continues to be incredibly busy right now as we shift from Halloween to the Thanksgiving season. And if you join me in a moment of silence for those teachers that had to teach today, the day after Halloween, especially the young ones that show up laden with sugar and hyper amongst all. So we are really aware of what happens. There's 2 days in the public school calendar that teachers dread. One is Halloween, the other is, guess?
Which one?
The day after Halloween.
No, it's the other Valentine's Day.
Okay, Valentine's.
The hormone-driven angst of Valentine's Day plus candy. Oh, it
It's
can.
not even the day, it's the
It's-
week.
It takes a while, but that day is really exciting. So anyways, just 2 items to highlight as we enter. So first, graduation rates. I've done a couple interviews recently, and I just wanted to provide an update on our graduation rates and shed some light on the challenges we faced during the virtual learning phase of the pandemic. I need to remind people that these rates are 2 years old. And so this is the first year that we had come back. And as anticipated, we observed a decline in our graduation rates, a phenomenon we've been advising the board to expect for the last few years. Again, these rates are from 2 years ago. Our first as we returned to face-to-face instruction. There's multifaceted reasons behind this decline, and they include factors that we can articulate and others that remain a little unclear. So during the virtual learning phase of the pandemic, we encountered a significant loss of approximately 5,000 students. Many of these students transitioned to homeschooling, private schools, or relocated out of the state. And additionally, some students seemingly vanished, aligning with the national narrative of the lost children of the pandemic. It's essential to note that students who provided information about their new academic endeavors should have been removed from our rolls. However, the state's graduation rate calculation allowing each student 4 years to graduate means that unrecorded transitions affect our overall rate. This includes students obtaining a GED or graduating in the subsequent semester. Connectivity challenges, the need for employment to mitigate family income loss, and health and mental health issues significantly impacted students during the pandemic. The graduation rate reflects those who fell behind as well as those who graduated later or in an alternative setting. It's noteworthy that the state did not make adjustments to the formula during these unprecedented times. Looking ahead, we anticipate a period of relatively stagnant graduation rates before witnessing an upward trend as new cohorts unaffected by credit loss during the pandemic enter the system. The successful implementation of the strategic plan is expected to play a pivotal role in this trajectory. To address the challenges and bolster our graduation rates, we must remain committed to expanding career and technical education programs, sustaining clubs and activities, and ensuring rigorous instruction that engages our students. Our attendance teams will persist in their efforts to enhance school attendance, recognizing that there's no singular solution to restoring our graduation rates. However, the existing structures have set us on the right path, and it's imperative that we stay the course. Of course, your continued support and dedication to our shared objectives are instrumental in overcoming these challenges and ensuring the success of our students. Along those lines, today, assessment results were released. You may recall that we were expecting those assessment results in June, I think.
Yeah.
So here we are, and I think this is the norm. So elementary and middle school students at Albuquerque Public Schools performed better on this year's student assessments, with the largest gains in English language arts and smaller gains in mathematics and science. APS 11th graders, meanwhile, saw declines from the prior school year in mathematics, science, and evidence-based reading and writing, according to assessment results released today by the State Public Education Department. These results show a 4.6% point increase in English language arts for elementary and middle school students, with 39.6% of students who took the test last spring testing proficient compared to 35% the prior year. A 0.5 percentage point increase in mathematics for elementary and middle school students, with 25.6% of them testing proficient. A 1.2 percentage point improvement in science district-wide, with 34.9% proficient compared to 33.7% the previous year. High school juniors, however, saw a 4.3% point drop in science, with 38.1% proficient compared to 42% the previous year. And then there's a 0.8 percentage point drop in evidence-based reading and writing for high school juniors, which is pretty negligible. 3.7% point drop in mathematics for high school juniors, with 18.3% proficient compared to 22% the previous year. So the proficiency rates are based on 2 tests New Mexico students took in the spring of 2023. Measures of student success and achievement was given to students in grades 3 through 8, with the science test also given to high school juniors. Proficiency rates for high school juniors in mathematics and reading and writing were based on the SAT school day grade exam. And of course, the district has launched several initiatives aimed at improving academic outcomes for all students. They include, and we always start with this, the shift to student outcomes focused governance by the Board of Education. Adoption of a new strategic plan for the district that, among other things, requires that students are being taught at grade level with high quality materials and that principals are supporting the work. The plan also prioritizes student engagement and doing anything possible to ensure APS schools are safe and that students feel welcome and challenged. An administration reorganization that places greater emphasis on improving literacy and mathematics proficiency rates. Specifically, one associate superintendent is working with schools and APS departments to improve literacy rates, while another associate superintendent is in charge of the district's efforts to improve math proficiency rates. Increased instructional time in English and mathematics for elementary school students, and free online tutoring for all students, which APS began offering last spring. So where I'm excited to see the improvements, I recognize that this is just 1 year. That does not make a trend, just like we had a hard time setting our growth models when we had 1 year of data. Okay, we have 2 years, it's good, we can start projecting growth, but we'll see what happens next year. But it's good. You know, I think if nothing else, standing pat is not falling behind. And again, we are still dealing with the effects of the pandemic, but we are making some progress. And I'd like to say that I'm glad that the reading scores went up. I hope it says something about the focus on letters. I would love to see more growth, but I hope people are encouraged and feel like, okay, we can really start turning this, move this bus. And it again, it's not going to get easy. It's not going to be simple, but hopefully we'll continue on a positive path. With that ends the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Does anyone have any questions for Superintendent, or can we move on? We'll just move on. Thank you so much for all of that information. I know it was like an interesting day. It's like, it's a little confusing between the 2 systems and having these assessments. And so I would imagine for the community, it's a little bit confusing. Vista says one thing and then we've got this other. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done around
That's an
how we-
interesting point.
how we clarify these things.
It's an interesting point because if you looked at Vistas yesterday, it reflected that our graduation rate was 78%, which is of course not the number we're working with. So, you know, there's a continuing evolution, and as they work in their new student information system, I think they're going to see some struggles, but we are doing a good job of looking at the data. And Mr. West and his team are being very vigilant in reviewing that data very carefully and making sure they can replicate the results that the state is producing.
Board Member Tapia.
So now we'll be able to plug in X, right? We could be actually put in numbers here. Do we know how soon that will get updated across the board so everyone can see our actual?
It's got the numbers today. So
Right.
hopefully we can get it
I would think within a few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, just
There's
give
some
us,
things that are going on behind the scenes that we have to
Yeah.
resolve before we jump into that, but it shouldn't take us very
because I
long.
know that they were still kind of messing with some data and just making sure that we're real clear on what it is we're reporting there, because it is a little bit, I'm confused as a community member in terms of looking at all that data and just what it all means. Yeah.
Yeah. At least the plus is we're moving
In the right direction. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Any other comments, questions? No. Okay. Just to,
Actually,
go ahead.
I mean, a shout out to staff because all of that
Mhm.
all of that happens because of the hard work of teachers and educators in those buildings. And I mean, we might set the tone and we can adopt policy, but it's the building level folks that make it happen.
Absolutely. Great point. I know everybody's working hard. Oh, it's so much work. All right, my next item is just the president's report. I'm going to be really brief and quick because I think we want to get out of here. So as you heard earlier tonight, the search for the Albuquerque Public School Superintendent is in full swing. There is a webpage that has gone up. So that was sent out to the board members and it's made public. So there's going to be a lot of transparency on that, and invite our community members to take a look at that. We'll be adding information as we go there. The Community Engagement Committee, thank you for planning the 2 events. And we're working with SAPR right now with the Strategic Analysis and Program Research to put together the online survey. That survey is, I think they were going to finish it up by today. Did they get it to us? We don't know for sure. Not yet. Anyway, I'm not going to put somebody on there, but it's here real soon, either tomorrow for sure or the next, I mean, really quickly. That survey, just so that the board members know, I have asked the Community Engagement Committee to be the ones that take a look at that for that last language piece. There was a lot of work that went into that. And what we're doing is we're going to be doing the survey in-house instead of doing it with the K-12 group that Mac and Jay was recommending. We can actually do a whole lot more internally. And so there was work with communications and with the SAPR team, and Johanna was part of that conversation. There was a lot of work going on there. And so the survey, as I understand, is just about complete. And so it's not going to come to the full board for review and final wordsmithing. We'll be here forever. So I'm going to trust the ad hoc committee, the Community Engagement Committee, to take a look at that and, just do your best on that, taking into account the thoughts and, everybody on this team. And so we'll get that done. But the survey, we plan to share that with the public beginning November 8th, and it's going to run from November 8th to the 22nd. I want to encourage students, families, staff, and community to complete the survey, and the board will use the public input as we evaluate the applicants. And just like the goals and guardrails, we want the characteristics of the new superintendent to reflect the community's visions and values. The superintendent job is now posted, so you can find the link to the application on the APS superintendent search website as well. Feel free to share the link, and the deadline to apply is December 12th. We are on track to having a new superintendent hopefully selected by the end of January and in place to hit the ground when Superintendent Elder begins his retirement, which is actually going to be July 1st. And everybody, he's still here with us, and he's going to continue to be here with us doing all this hard work for this next semester. So I just want to say how much I appreciate Superintendent and the work that he's doing right now to keep everything going. Lastly, I just want to say that Board Member Peterson and I had a chance to attend the Fall 2023 Tribal Leaders Summit. It was a wonderful summit. Our tribal leaders were there. And just a shout out again to the district, I think, for engaging with that community, a really important conversation around the needs assessment that is currently underway. I'll have Johanna, maybe we can collect the presentation material, this one, and share it with the board members. It was really a good framework that they're using for assessing the needs of our students. There's going to be a draft document that's coming out that's going to be going to the tribal leaders themselves to make sure that we're capturing their needs and that it's reflective of what they're wanting to see in that. And so I think that will also help inform us around some of the characteristics and the needs that we need around a superintendent too. It's very reflective of that. It's their community voice. And then I just want to encourage our board members. There's a really, this is Native American, Indian American Awareness Month. And so there is going to be a powwow that's going to be held at, where's my, at Albuquerque High on the 9th. And I went last year. It's just a wonderful event. If you can get there, I highly recommend it. This is our youth and our leadership team from APS. Just encourage you to get out there and kind of listen and learn with our community. And with that,
Madam President,
yes.
one point, I would encourage you all to vote on November 7th, especially in the mill levy election. Just a
Yes.
reminder that we have a mill levy election.
We do have a
If y'all
mill
have
levy.
forgotten, so. Or earlier, if you want to go earlier, yeah, so mill
Yes,
levy.
mill levy, and if
No
you've
new
got a school
taxes.
board- Yeah, mill levy, no new taxes. Please get out and vote and encourage people to vote. There's wonderful information on social media. Please share it with your social media so we can get that out. We can get people encouraged to vote for that. So, all right, the next Board of Education meeting will be November 15th. I can't believe we're in November 2023 at 5 p.m. And the special Board of Education meeting on charter schools will be November 8th at 5 p.m. Meetings will be held here at the Allison Bruce King Educational Complex, 64 Uptown Boulevard, and live streamed at aps.edu. And again, I just want to say thank you so much to the board tonight for your hard work and for us coming to consensus on that governance manual. That was awesome. Thank you.
Miss Basketball game.